Hey guys, tonight we're going to slow things down and sit with a story that matters. Meet Terrence Mitchell, a 42-year-old black FBI agent, a man whose quiet strength holds his family together. He's planned a dream vacation in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, hoping for laughter and peace with his wife Lena and their 2 kids. But what begins as a joyful escape turns into a battle against prejudice, testing Terrence's dignity in ways he never imagined. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly move you. Comment your city and the time you're watching. Now, close your eyes or don't. It's your choice. Either way, you're about to witness something real. The sun hangs low over Myrtle Beach, painting the sky in hues of peach and gold as Terrence Mitchell steers the family's SUV into the gravel driveway of their rented cottage. The air smells of salt and seagrass, and the faint crash of waves hums in the distance. The cottage, a weathered 2-story with pale blue shutters and a wide front porch, feels like a promise kept after months of planning. Terrence, broad-shouldered and steady, steps out, stretching his arms with a satisfied sigh. His FBI badge tucked in the glove box is a world away from this moment. His wife, Lena, 39, slides out of the passenger seat, her sundress catching the breeze, her smile tired but warm. Their children, 13-year-old Jamal and 9-year-old Aisha, tumble from the back, their laughter sharp and bright as they race toward the porch swing. "Don't break that thing before we unpack," Terrence calls, his voice deep and playful. Jamal, all lanky limbs and boundless energy, grins back. "No promises, Dad." Aisha, clutching her stuffed dolphin, giggles, her braids bouncing. Lena shakes her head, hauling a cooler from the trunk. "They've been cooped up for hours, Terrence. Let 'em run." He chuckles, grabbing a duffel bag, his eyes scanning the street. Palm trees sway gently, and pastel-colored houses line the block, their lawns manicured to perfection. It's the kind of neighborhood where every porch has a flag and every driveway a gleaming SUV. A perfect escape, he thinks. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. But as Terrence hefts a suitcase, a prickle of unease creeps up his neck. Across the street, a man in his late 60s khakis, golf shirt, silver hair, stands on his porch, staring. His eyes narrow, not with curiosity, but with something colder, sharper. Terrence meets his gaze, offering a polite nod. The man doesn't nod back. Instead, he turns and disappears inside the screen door, slapping shut. Terrence's jaw tightens, but he shakes it off. He's faced worse in his 17 years with the Bureau interrogations, undercover ops cases that kept him up at night. A neighbor's stare is nothing. Still, the air feels heavier now, the sunlight less forgiving. Lena notices her brow furrowing as she sets the cooler on the porch. "You okay?" she asks, her voice soft but probing. She's a pediatric nurse attuned to every shift in mood. Terrence forces a smile. "Just stretching my legs. Grab the grocery bags." She nods, but her eyes linger, reading him. They've been married 15 years. She knows when he's holding back. Inside the cottage, smells of cedar and lemon cleaner. The living room is cozy with mismatched furniture and seashell decor. Jamal claims the bunk bedroom upstairs, while Aisha flops onto a couch, already sketching the beach in her notebook. Terrence unpacks groceries, cereal milk, Lena's favorite mangoes, his hands moving on autopilot. The normalcy of it grounds him. Outside, a woman walks her dog, a sleek golden retriever, along the sidewalk. She's white, maybe 50, with yoga pants and a visor. Her glance at the family is brief, but pointed her lips a thin line. She quickens her pace, tugging the dog along. Terence, stacking suitcases by the door, catches it. Lena, wiping down the kitchen counter, mutters, "Here we go." He doesn't respond, but his fingers grip the suitcase handle a little tighter. They've felt this before on road trips, in restaurants, at parent-teacher conferences. The unspoken assumption that they don't belong. Terence has taught himself to let it slide to keep his cool. For the kids, for Lena, for himself. But the unease grows. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the street, a police cruiser rolls by. It moves slowly, too slowly. The officer inside, a young white man with a crew cut, staring at the cottage. Terence, sitting on the porch swing with a glass of iced tea, tracks the car. It circles the block and passes again. His pulse quickens, but his face remains calm, a mask honed by years of high-stakes work. "That's twice," he says quietly when Lena steps outside, her arms crossed. She follows his gaze, her expression hardening. "They're just flexing," she says, but her voice wavers. "Right." Terence doesn't answer. He stands brushing off his jeans and walks to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. His movements are deliberate hands, visible shoulders relaxed. He's done this dance before, making himself unthreatening, unremarkable. The cruiser idles across the street, the officer's eyes locked on him. Terence nods a small gesture. No response. He retrieves a flyer from the mailbox, some local pizza joint, and heads back. Jamal appears on the porch, his phone in hand. "Dad, that cop's still there," he says, his voice low, uncertain. Terence's chest tightens, but he keeps his tone steady. "Just go help your mom." "Okay." Inside, Lena's on the phone with the rental agency, her voice sharp. "Yes, I sent the confirmation email. It's all paid up. No, we're not squatters." She paces her sandals, clicking on the hardwood. Terence sets the flyer on the counter, his mind racing. He's seen this playbook: suspicious calls, quick escalations. His work has taken him into communities where trust in law enforcement is a ghost, where a black man's presence is enough to trigger alarm. But this is his vacation, his family's sanctuary. He clenches his fists, then releases them, his breath slow and controlled. Quiet strength, he reminds himself. It's kept him alive. Another cruiser pulls up, lights off, but presence loud. Two officers step out, one older, grizzled, the other young and tense. They stand by the curb, hands near their belts, watching the cottage like it's a crime scene. Neighbors peek from behind curtains, their silhouettes faint but unmistakable. Aisha, peering through the window, whispers, "Daddy, why are they here?" Her voice trembles, and Terence's heart cracks. He kneels beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "It's a mistake, sweetheart. We'll sort it out." But his eyes meet Lena's, and they both know it's more than that. The older officer calls out, his voice cutting through the evening air. "Step onto the porch, sir. Hands where we can see 'em." Terence freezes his mind, flashing to his badge in the glove box, to the rental papers on the kitchen table. He could end this now, but something in the officer's tone, hard, unyielding, tells him they're not here to listen. Lena steps forward, her voice firm. "We're renting this place. The paperwork's inside. The officer doesn't blink. Ma'am, stay where you are. Jamal, hovering by the door, looks at Terrence, his eyes wide. Dad. Terrence raises his hands slowly, his gaze steady. Stay calm, Jamal. Take Aisha inside. His voice is a lifeline, but his mind is elsewhere calculating. The neighbors' stares burn into him, their silence louder than any accusation. He steps onto the porch, the wood creaking under his weight, and faces the officers. The younger one shifts his hand, twitching near his holster. Terrence's dignity, his quiet strength, holds him upright. But as the officers close in their boots, heavy on the gravel, he knows this moment will test everything he is. The evening air in Myrtle Beach thickens heavy with the scent of salt and tension as Terrence Mitchell stands on the porch of the rented cottage, hands raised, his silhouette stark against the fading gold of the horizon. The two officers, one grizzled with a face carved by years of unchallenged authority, the other young eyes darting with nervous energy, step closer, their boots crunching gravel. Across the street, neighbors' curtains twitch, their faces half hidden, watching the scene unfold like a stage play they're too timid to interrupt. Lena, framed in the doorway, clutches the rental papers, her fingers trembling but her voice sharp. "We are not trespassers," she says, holding up the documents. "This is our vacation." The older officer, badge glinting under the porch light, doesn't glance at the papers. "Step back, ma'am." He snaps his tone a wall. Terrence's chest tightens, but his face remains a mask of calm, his eyes locked on the officers. Some truths linger waiting to be unveiled. Jamal, 13, and lanky, hovers behind his mother, his phone gripped tightly as if it could shield him. Aisha, 9, clings to Lena's side, her stuffed dolphin pressed against her chest, her wide eyes darting between her father and the men with guns. "Daddy, what's happening?" she whispers, her voice a fragile thread. Terrence's heart lurches, but he keeps his voice steady, a lifeline for his kids. "It's okay, Aisha. Just stay with Mom." He steps forward, hands still raised, his movements slow, deliberate, every gesture calculated to diffuse. He's navigated worse raids, interrogations, moments where a single wrong move could end everything. But this is different. This is his family, his sanctuary, and the weight of their fear presses against his ribs like a bruise. The younger officer, his hand still twitching near his holster, barks. On the ground now, the command is sharp, unyielding, and Terrence's jaw clenches. He could mention his FBI badge tucked in the glove box or the rental confirmation on the kitchen counter, but the officer's eyes, hard, already decided. Tell him they're not here to listen. "I'm trying to explain," Terrence says, his voice low, measured. "We're renting this house. The paperwork's right there." He nods toward Lena, who steps forward again, papers in hand. "Please, just look," she says, her voice rising a mix of fury and desperation. The older officer waves her off. "You'll get your chance at the station." The station. The word lands like a stone and Lena's face pales. "The station," she repeats, her voice cracking. "We're on vacation. Our kids are right here." Jamal steps closer, his shoulders squared despite the tremor in his hands. "They didn't do anything," he says, his voice small but defiant. The younger officer spins toward him, eyes narrowing. "Kid, back inside." Terrence's calm cracks just a sliver. He's 13, he says, his tone firm but controlled. He's not a threat. The officer doesn't respond, but his hand stays near his gun, and the air grows tighter electric with unspoken threats. Another cruiser pulls up, lights flashing but sirens silent, and 2 more officers join the scene. The neighborhood, once quiet, now hums with the weight of their presence. A woman across the street, the one with the golden retriever, stands on her lawn phone in hand, recording. Her face is unreadable curiosity, not concern. The man in khakis, the one who stared earlier, watches from his porch arms, crossed his silence a kind of complicity. Terrence feels their eyes, the collective judgment of a community that's already decided who he is. He's seen this in his work reports of profiling families humiliated for existing in the wrong place. But now it's his family, and the injustice burns a slow fire in his chest. "Sir, I'm asking you one more time," the older officer says, his voice a low growl. "Get on the ground." Terrence's mind races. He could comply, de-escalate, but the image of his kids watching their trust in the world fracturing stops him. "I'm not a criminal," he says, his voice steady, each word deliberate. "My name is Terrence Mitchell. We rented this house. My ID's in the car." The younger officer moves fast, grabbing Terrence's arm, twisting it behind his back. Pain shoots through his shoulder, but he doesn't flinch. Lena cries out, "Stop it! You're hurting him!" Aisha screams, a high piercing sound that cuts through the night, and Jamal pulls her close, his face a mask of helpless anger. The older officer steps toward Lena, his hand raised. "Ma'am, calm down or you're next." Lena's eyes blaze, but she steps back, clutching the papers to her chest, her breath ragged. "You're making a mistake," she says, her voice shaking but fierce. "You're scaring our children." The officer ignores her, nodding to his partner, who shoves Terrence toward the lawn. The gravel bites into his knees as he's forced down, his hands yanked into cuffs. The cold metal bites his wrists, and the humiliation public deliberate settles over him like a shroud. Neighbors watch, their silence deafening as Aisha's sobs echo from the porch. Terrence keeps his head up, his gaze fixed on the cottage where his family stands frozen. Jamal's eyes meet his wide with fear, but searching for strength. Terrence nods, a small gesture, but it's enough. "Stay with your sister," he says, his voice calm despite the chaos. The younger officer, red-faced and breathing hard, leans close. "You don't get to give orders," he snaps. Terrence doesn't respond, his dignity a quiet rebellion. He's been here before, in a way stared down by men who see his skin before his humanity. But this time it's not just him. It's Lena fighting tears as she's pushed against the porch railing. It's Jamal trying to be brave for Aisha. It's the life they've built now cracked open for all to see. A third officer approaches the SUV, peering through the window. There's something in the glove box. He says, his voice casual, as if this were routine. Terrence's heart skips. "That's my ID," he says, loud enough to carry. "Check it." The officer hesitates, then shrugs. "We'll sort it at the station." Lena's voice rises desperate now. "It's right there. The rental papers, his ID, everything." But the officers are already moving, pulling Terrence to his feet, leading him toward a cruiser. Lena's pushed into another, her sandals slipping on the gravel, her face a mix of fury and fear. The kids stand alone on the porch, Aisha clutching her dolphin. Jamal's arms around her, their world unraveling. As Terrence is shoved into the back seat, the cruiser's interior smells of vinyl and sweat. He leans his head against the window, watching the cottage shrink in the distance. Aisha's stuffed dolphin lies abandoned on the porch steps, a small, heartbreaking detail. He thinks of his work cases of misconduct families broken by moments like this. He's written reports, given testimony. But now he's living it. The shame isn't his, but it's there heavy for the lesson his kids are learning too soon. The officer in the front seat glances back, his eyes flickering with doubt. Terrence meets his gaze unyielding. "You're wrong about us," he says quietly. The officer looks away, and the car pulls onto the street, leaving the cottage behind. The Myrtle Beach police station smells of stale coffee and disinfectant, its fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow over scuffed linoleum floors. Terrence Mitchell sits on a metal bench, wrists still cuffed, the cold steel biting into his skin. His shoulders ache from the rough arrest, but his face remains composed, a fortress of quiet strength. Across the hall, Lena's voice echoes sharp and unyielding, demanding answers from an officer who offers none. "My children are alone," she says, her words a blade through the station's indifference. Terrence's chest tightens at the thought of Jamal and Aisha stranded on the cottage porch, their stuffed dolphin abandoned in the gravel. The image burns a wound he can't soothe. Some truths linger waiting to be unveiled. The station hums with low-activity phones ringing, officers shuffling papers, their glances at Terrence fleeting but heavy with assumption. He's seen this in his FBI work, the machinery of authority grinding forward, uninterested in pause or reflection. A young officer, barely 25, with a buzz cut and nervous eyes, passes by, slowing as he notices Terrence. "You the guy from the beach house?" he asks, his tone half curious, half mocking. Terrence meets his gaze steady. "I'm Terrence Mitchell. My ID's in my SUV glove box left side." The officer blinks, then hurries off as if the words carry weight he's not ready to lift. Minutes drag, each one a test of Terrence's restraint. He thinks of his kids, of Jamal's trembling defiance, Aisha's tear-streaked face. He's taught them resilience, pride, but tonight they've learned something uglier: how quickly the world can turn on you. The shame isn't theirs, but it's there, a shadow cast by strangers' fear. A sergeant, mid-50s, stocky, with a face like weathered stone, approaches. "You say you're FBI?" he asks, skepticism thick in his voice. Terrence nods, his voice calm but firm. "Special Agent Terrence Mitchell, Charleston Field Office. My badge is in the car. Check it." The sergeant grunts, scribbling something on a clipboard, then walks away. No apology, no urgency. Lena appears, escorted by a female officer, her wrists red from the cuffs now removed. Her eyes blaze with fury, but her lips tremble, betraying the fear beneath. She sits beside Terrence, her shoulder brushing his, a silent anchor. "They're saying it's a mix-up," she whispers, her voice low, bitter. "A neighbor called, said we looked suspicious." Suspicious Terrence. He exhales, slow and controlled, his fingers flexing against the soreness in his wrists. "They didn't even look at the papers," he says, his voice a quiet storm. "They saw us and decided." Lena's hand finds his, her grip tight, and for a moment they're alone in the chaos, holding each other up. Outside, the night deepens, and Terence imagines the cottage, its porch light glowing, Jamal and Aisha waiting, scared but brave. He's proud of them, but the pride is laced with pain. He thinks of his own childhood in Atlanta, the times he was followed in stores, questioned for walking in the wrong neighborhood. He swore his kids would know better, but here they are learning the same hard truth. The station door swings open, and the young officer returns, his face paler now. Sir," he stammers, avoiding Terrence's eyes. "We're checking the vehicle now." Terrence doesn't respond, his silence a rebuke. The officer shifts, then retreats, leaving the air thick with unspoken guilt. The sergeant reappears, holding a radio that crackles with static. "Found something in the glove box," a voice reports. "Leather holder FBI seal." The sergeant's jaw tightens, but he doesn't look at Terrence. "Bring it in," he says, his voice clipped. Lena leans forward, her voice sharp. "You had no right to do this. None." The sergeant ignores her, but his shoulders stiffen, a crack in his armor. Terrence's mind races not with fear, but with clarity. He's seen officers like these in his investigations, men who act first, justify later. But tonight, they've crossed a line, and he's not just a bystander. He's the case. A memory surfaces, a case from 2 years ago, a black family in Georgia detained for fitting a description. Terrence wrote the report, interviewed. The parents saw the same fear in their eyes he now feels in his own. He promised himself he'd shield his family from that. The failure stings, but it also sharpens his resolve. He leans toward Lena, his voice low. "We're getting through this. For the kids." She nods, her eyes fierce. "And then, we're making it right." Her words are a vow, and Terrence feels the weight of their shared strength, a quiet fire that's kept them whole through years of challenges. The station clock ticks, each second a reminder of the kids alone waiting. Terrence's cuffs are finally removed, but the humiliation lingers, a public scar. He rubs his wrists, his movements slow, deliberate, as if reclaiming his dignity. The young officer returns, holding Terrence's badge, his face a mix of shame and unease. "We confirmed it," he says, offering the badge like a peace offering. Terrence takes it, his fingers brushing the familiar leather, but he doesn't speak. His silence is louder than any accusation, a mirror held up to the officer's haste. Lena stands, her voice cutting through the room. "Where are our children?" The sergeant, now avoiding her gaze, mutters, "We've sent a car to check on them." Terrence's eyes narrow. "You left them alone on a porch in a strange town," he says, his voice low, lethal. The sergeant shifts his authority, fraying. "It's being handled," he says, but the words are hollow. Terrence's mind flashes to Jamal stepping up for Aisha, to the stuffed dolphin on the porch steps. He's proud, but the pride is a blade cutting deep. He knows this moment will shape them just as it's reshaping him. The station door opens again, and an older man in a suit, not a uniform, enters, his face tight with forced calm, likely the chief or someone close. He sits across from Terrence and Lena, his hands folded. "We've verified your identity," he says, as if reading from a script. "This was a misunderstanding." Lena's laugh is sharp, bitter. "A misunderstanding. You terrified our kids." Terrence leans forward, his voice steady, each word a stone. "You had 4 officers, 2 cruisers, and my rental papers on the counter. You chose not to look." The man's eyes flicker, but he offers no apology, only a vague promise to review the incident. Terrence's dignity holds him upright, a quiet rebellion against the system that failed him. He thinks of his badge not as a shield, but as a tool, one he'll use to ensure this doesn't happen again. The chief stands, signaling the end of the conversation, but Terrence's gaze doesn't waver. "This isn't over," he says, his voice soft but unyielding. The chief nods a gesture empty of meaning and leaves. Lena's hand finds Terrence's again, her grip a reminder of their shared fight. As they're led to retrieve their belongings, Terrence's resolve hardens. The truth is coming, and he'll carry it like a torch. The Myrtle Beach night is thick with humidity, the air clinging to Terrence Mitchell's skin as he steps out of the police cruiser, his wrists finally free but still raw from the cuffs. The cottage looms ahead, its porch light casting a soft glow across the gravel driveway, a beacon in the chaos. Lena walks beside him, her sandals scuffing the ground, her face a storm of fury and relief. The street is quiet now, the neighbors' curtains drawn, but their earlier stares linger in Terrence's mind, a silent accusation that stings as much as the handcuffs. Jamal and Aisha wait on the porch. Jamal's arm around his sister Aisha, clutching her stuffed dolphin, its fabric damp with tears. The sight cracks something deep in Terrence's chest, but his face remains steady, a shield of quiet strength. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. The officers who escorted them back, a different pair younger, their faces tight with unease, linger by their cruiser radios crackling. Terrence ignores them, his focus on his children. Jamal runs forward, his voice breaking. "Dad, you're okay." Terrence kneels, pulling him into a hug, his hand firm on the boy's back. "I'm right here, son," he says, his voice low, steady. Aisha buries her face in Lena's arms, her sobs muffled. "Why'd they take you?" she whispers. Lena strokes her braids, her voice trembling but fierce. "They were wrong, baby. So wrong." Terrence's jaw tightens, his eyes scanning the street. The man in khakis, the one who likely called, watches from his porch, a shadow behind his screen door. Terrence's gaze locks on him, unyielding, and the man retreats, the door clicking shut. Inside the cottage is unchanged grocery bags on the counter. Aisha's sketchbook open to a half-drawn beach, but the air feels heavier, tainted. Terrence picks up the rental papers, his fingers tracing the confirmation number, the proof they were never allowed to show. Lena sets Aisha on the couch, pouring her water, her movements sharp with suppressed rage. "They didn't even look," she says, her voice low, bitter. Terrence nods, his mind racing. He's faced prejudice before, store clerks trailing him, colleagues questioning his credentials. But this is different. This was public, deliberate in front of his kids. The humiliation is a weight, but it's also a spark igniting something fierce within him. He steps onto the porch, phone in hand, dialing his supervisor in Charleston. The line connects quickly, and Director Elaine Carter's voice is tight, concerned. "Terrence, what happened?" He paces, his voice calm but edged with steel. "4 officers, no questions, cuffed us in front of our kids. I need body cam footage, 911 transcripts, everything flagged." She pauses, then says, "It's done." "This is personal, isn't it?" Terrence glances at the cottage where Lena comforts Aisha. "Yeah," he says. It is. He hangs up his resolve, hardening. He's not just an agent now. He's a father, a husband, a man who won't let this slide. The next morning, the street buzzes with whispers. A neighbor's Ring camera caught the arrest, and the footage is spreading online, grainy but damning. Terrence's phone pings with messages, colleagues, friends, a civil rights attorney offering support. Lena scrolls through comments on a local news site, her face grim. They're calling it a misunderstanding, she says, her voice dripping with scorn. A misunderstanding doesn't leave my kids crying. Terrence sits at the kitchen table, laptop open, drafting a formal complaint. His fingers move deliberately, each word a stone in a growing wall of accountability. He's written reports like this before, but this one feels different, raw, personal, a demand for justice. A knock at the door interrupts him. Lena opens it, revealing the young officer from the station, the one who held Terrence's badge. He's out of uniform, his face, pale eyes downcast. I wanted to apologize, he says, his voice unsteady. I saw the footage. We messed up. Lena's eyes narrow, her voice sharp. You think sorry fixes this? You scared my children. The officer flinches, but Terrence steps forward, his presence commanding. Why didn't you check my ID? He asks, his voice low, piercing. The officer stammers. The call said suspicious activity. We just acted. Terrence's gaze doesn't waver. You acted on fear, not facts. The officer leaves his apology hanging in the air, inadequate. Terrence returns to his laptop, but the moment shifts something. The truth is out, and it's spreading. By noon, a local reporter calls then another. The story is gaining traction. FBI agent detained on vacation, racial bias suspected. Terrence agrees to an interview, his voice steady as he recounts the night, the cuffs, the kids' fear. It shouldn't take a badge to be treated like a human, he says, his words echoing online, shared thousands of times. Lena watches him, pride flickering through her anger. You're doing this for more than us, she says. He nods, his eyes distant. For every family who doesn't have a badge. The climax comes that evening as Terrence and Lena return to the cottage after picking up dinner. A crowd has gathered, neighbors, some curious, some ashamed, drawn by the viral footage. The man in khakis stands at the edge, his face flushed, eyes averted. Two officers from the original arrest approach, their badges glinting under the streetlights. The older one clears his throat, his voice strained. Agent Mitchell, we've been ordered to return your belongings and offer a formal apology. Terrence stands on the porch upright, his presence a quiet storm. I'm FBI, he says, his voice cutting through the murmurs. You had my ID, my papers, and you chose to cuff me in front of my kids. Why? The crowd shifts. Phones raised, recording. The younger officer steps forward, his face red. We got a call. We thought. Terrence cuts him off, his voice rising not in anger, but in clarity. You thought we didn't belong. You saw a black family and decided we were a threat. The words land like a thunderclap, and the officers freeze, their bias exposed under the porch light. The crowd murmurs, some nodding, others looking away. The man in khakis slinks back, his shame a palpable weight. Lena stands beside Terrence, her hand on his arm, her eyes fierce. Jamal and Aisha watch from the doorway, their faces a mix of pride and healing. The officers mutter apologies, but Terrence's gaze doesn't soften. "Your department's under review," he says, his voice steady. "This isn't about me, it's about the next family." The crowd disperses, but the moment lingers a turning point. The police retreat, their authority diminished, and Terrence feels the weight of his truth a beacon in the darkness. He turns to his family, pulling them close, the porch light soft around them. The fight isn't over, but the truth is out, and it's a start. The Myrtle Beach morning dawns soft, the sky a pale wash of blue as Terrence Mitchell stands on the cottage porch, a mug of coffee warming his hands. The air carries the faint tang of salt, and the distant waves hum a steady rhythm, but the street feels different now, quieter, as if holding its breath. The neighbors' curtains stay drawn, their silence a kind of retreat after last night's confrontation. Inside, Lena packs Aisha's sketchbook into a suitcase, her movements slow, deliberate, while Jamal plays a board game with his sister, their laughter a fragile thread weaving through the tension. Terrence's FBI badge rests on the kitchen counter, its leather holder worn but resolute, a symbol not of victory but of survival. The viral footage of their arrest has passed 1 million views, and Terrence's words, "You saw a black family and decided we were a threat," echo across news feeds, a call for accountability that's reshaping the town. His dignity, a quiet fire, burns brighter than ever. Some truths linger waiting to be unveiled. The past week has been a whirlwind. The Myrtle Beach Police Department, under pressure, suspends 2 officers and launches a full investigation. Their press release vague but damning in its admissions. A local councilwoman calls for bias training, her voice amplified by national outlets picking up the story. Terrence's inbox overflows civil rights groups, former colleagues, even strangers offering support. A professor from his Quantico days emails, "You've given a face to the fight, Terrence." "Keep going." Lena, scrolling through comments on her phone, reads one aloud. "This family deserves justice. Shame on that town." She looks at Terrence, her eyes fierce but weary. "They're listening now," she says. He nods, but his gaze drifts to the porch where Aisha's stuffed dolphin, now cleaned and dried, sits on the swing. The small victories don't erase the scars. Terrence steps inside, setting his mug down, and joins Lena at the table. "I spoke to Elaine again," he says, referring to his supervisor. "They're pulling body cam footage, the 911 calls being transcribed." Lena's jaw tightens. "Think it was him?" she asks, nodding toward the khaki-clad neighbor's house across the street. Terrence shrugs, his voice low. "Him or someone like him. Doesn't matter who called, it's why they believed it." Lena reaches for his hand, her grip a quiet vow. "We're not letting this fade," she says. Terrence squeezes back his resolve, a mirror of hers. They've faced hard moments before, late-night shifts, tight budgets, the weight of raising black kids in a world quick to judge. But this feels bigger, a fight for more than themselves. Jamal appears holding a folded paper, his expression serious. "Dad, I wrote something for school," he says, handing it over. Terrence unfolds it, reading the title, "The Night I Learned Trust Can Break." The essay is simple, raw, a 13-year-old's account of watching his parents cuffed, of feeling helpless but proud. Terrence's throat tightens, but he smiles, his hand on Jamal's shoulder. "You told the truth, son," he says. "That's enough." Jamal nods, his eyes bright with something new, resilience maybe, or the beginnings of his own quiet strength. Aisha, sketching nearby, looks up. "I drew us Daddy," she says, showing a picture of the cottage, 4 stick figures under a bright sun. Terrence's heart swells the image, a small act of healing. A knock at the door interrupts. It's a woman from down the street, mid-40s, her face hesitant but kind. "I saw what happened," she says, holding a plate of cookies. "I should have spoken up that night. I'm sorry." Lena takes the plate, her voice cool but polite. "Thank you." But sorry doesn't fix it. The woman nods, her eyes downcast, and leaves. Terrence watches her go, his thoughts drifting to the neighbor in khakis, who hasn't shown his face since the confrontation. "Let him live with it," he says, echoing Lena's words from days ago. But the weight of that silence, of a community's complicity, lingers, a reminder of how far the fight stretches. By afternoon, Terrence is on a video call with a national reporter, his face calm but his words sharp. This wasn't about one bad call. He says, his voice carrying the weight of every case he's worked, every family he's met. It's about systems that let fear override facts, about kids who learn too young that their skin makes them suspects. The reporter nods, her questions probing but respectful. Lena watches from the couch, Aisha curled beside her, and when the call ends, she smiles, faint but real. "You're changing things, Terrence," she says. He shakes his head, humble but determined. "I'm just starting." The sun sets, painting the cottage in shades of amber, and Terrence sits with Jamal on the porch, the swing creaking softly. Aisha and Lena are inside packing the last of their things. Jamal stares at the street, his voice quiet. "Why'd they think we didn't belong?" Terrence lets the question settle, his answer gentle but honest. "Some people see us and assume the worst, son, not because of who we are, but because of what they've been taught." Jamal nods, his fingers tracing the edge of the swing. "But you made them see you," he says. Terrence's chest tightens, pride and pain intertwined. "We made them see us," he corrects. "All of us." The family leaves the cottage the next morning, their SUV packed, the porch light dimmed. The street is empty, but the story isn't. Terrence's complaint to Internal Affairs is filed, his words a blueprint for reform. The viral footage sparks protests in Charleston, calls for accountability that echo beyond Myrtle Beach. In a nation built on second chances, Terrence's voice, steady, unyielding, carves a path for those who come after. He thinks of Aisha's drawing, Jamal's essay, Lena's fierce love, and knows this fight is theirs too. The road ahead is long, but dignity once claimed doesn't fade. It grows, a quiet victory that reshapes the world, one truth at a time.